Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the UUR, a Severance podcast. I am Kali Thomas, and I am here with my co-host, Rodnesha Green.
Hi, everyone.
We're back with another of what we are calling our Between Floors episodes. If you've been following along, you know, at this point, you never really know what you're going to get with these Between Floors episodes. And so today we have a very special guest with us who has honestly been so gracious and a real cheerleader for our podcast, as well as many other Severance podcasts. But before we talk to him, Rodnesha is going to tell everybody a little bit more about him.
Yeah, keep the mystery going. Unless you're watching and then maybe you can see. But anyway, our guest today is not just a Severance fan. He has also had the opportunity to even lend consultation to the show. How, you ask? We will get there. But before we do, I would like to take you on a little journey of who we're about to sit down with. Before he got the chance to meander the White Halls that Mark and Milchick have, this man served in the U.S. military. He was deployed to Iraq from 2005 to 2007, where he spent over 500 days serving. Now a post 9/11 era veteran, he talks openly and very candidly about his journey and life with PTSD. In fact, it was his transparency that opened the door to a very unique opportunity to speak with Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson at San Diego Comic-Con in 2022. On social media, he's known by many folks in the Severance community as Mailman Mike, where he daily dunks boxes, hypes podcasts, and talks all things basketball, especially if it has to do with the Milwaukee Bucks. R.I.P. I know, it was tough. And today we're going to discuss how trauma informs the world of Severance through his lens and how his own story with PTSD has allowed him to not only offer consultation to the show, but watch it through a very unique perspective. And hopefully we'll get some fun stories about his time on set along the way. So we are very excited to have him here. Will you all please help me welcome Mike Lang?
Hey.
Welcome, Mike.
Hey, welcome.
Hi, hello, thanks for having me. I have loved your podcast since I first saw it online, which blew me away because you guys get to play with your backgrounds so much and no one else does that.
Oh.
And I don't know why no one thought of that. So congratulations to you guys for thinking of that first. But you are in my, solid group of Severance podcasts that I listen to while I dunk boxes.
Awesome.
Yay. To be fair, Mike, I feel like part of the advantage we had with the background thing came from a previous project that we did that was online table reads that we worked on through COVID. And so we've gotten very comfortable with using the virtual space to create ambiance.
Yeah, it's our set design.
It is.
Yeah, it's excellent because, like I said, no one else is doing that in this space. And I thought when I first saw, your videos and then the podcast itself, like, this is brilliant. And your commentary is excellent. I really like what you guys say about each individual episode or individual characters. It's not just analysis of like, oh, we saw X, Y, and Z. It's, in-depth analysis on Severance. And that's fantastic.
Thank you, first of all. And also, that's why we have you here today, because we love our own varied perspectives, and it's going to be so fun to get your perspective as well. I have actually been really fascinated, and I feel like Kali and I have talked offline to a degree about PTSD and trauma and these characters and how this whole world has basically been shaped by that. So we are very much looking forward to getting your POV on that as well.
Yeah,
that's what brought me into the show. Was my experience with PTSD.
Well, let's get to that. That's a great segue. So great transition to find out more about Mike. Kali, you want to get us into that?
Well, yeah. I mean, we got a little bit in that intro, but tell us more about yourself, Mike. Where'd you grow up? What was your family like?
I'm an only child. I grew up right outside the city of Milwaukee, in the suburbs of Milwaukee. It was a pretty standard childhood. I would say I wish I had siblings, but I really don't. I was very happy to be on my own and have my own imagination just running wild. The one thing a lot of people don't know is I joined the military at 17. So I enlisted right after I left high school. I have a late summer birthday, so I wasn't 18 when I enlisted. And when people find that out, that kind of blows their minds. Like, here's this kid going off into the military, specifically the U.S. Air Force, and then having this adventure, play out in front of me. And I can say that now, but in the moment, it was a nightmare. Like, it was not a fun time to go to war at 18 years old, and then to have to live through that was very difficult. So I, just wanted to do this coming out of high school. Like, I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I didn't know if I was going to go to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. So going into the Air Force in the post 9/11, environment, I was like, this is what I want to try. And I didn't know if I would like it. I didn't know if I'd succeed. It just was my option at the time.
Was there something in particular that drew you to the Air Force side of serving?
I originally wanted to be a pilot. As a child, I wanted to be an astronaut, but I have a color deficiency, so that was all scrapped. And when I was 16, I found that out. I didn't know that I was technically colorblind.
Whoa, you had gone your whole life without knowing?
I still go throughout my whole life without seeing certain colors the right way. So I kind of have a little joke with people, like, what do you see? Because I see something totally different. So my view of the world is a little different compared to everyone else's, which is interesting. But yeah, when I was 16, they told me I couldn't fly planes. I couldn't work with missile guidance systems or drones or anything like that. So that all got taken away. And it was quite heartbreaking at 16 to find out, you couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. So that's the unfortunate side of things. But I ended up being what is known as life support. So it's kind of like a medic, but also you teach and train survival skills while you're in the States. Okay. So you get to play around with a lot of different equipment. And ironically, I worked with night vision goggles, which have green light, and I can't see green. So how great is that from the U.S. Air Force?
Oh my gosh.
That's interesting that wasn't off of the table then, like some of the other things with the color deficiencies.
Yeah, that was the running joke while I did the job, was like, here, I'm going to put my night vision goggles on, and I can't see you because I can't see green light, supposedly. I don't know why that existed that way. It just happened. It was pretty fascinating. It never stopped me from doing my career or job, but It was wild to get that. And you're like, I guess this is fine. I'm not going to kill anybody with night vision goggles, but I can't fly the airplane or fly, any other equipment.
Right.
Oh, crazy. So going back to your military experience, so you joined after 9/11 happened, correct?
Yeah, I enlisted in 2004.
Okay. So was that part of the impetus for you wanting to join, or was that completely separate?
There was a little bit of patriotism in that, like, oh, I'm going to go serve my country and see where that takes me. I had a couple family members that had served in Vietnam, and I had some relatives that I had never met that served in World War II. So there really wasn't a push to push me in, right? My parents had no clue what could happen or what was going to happen. The information you're given is from a recruiter who most likely is lying to you to get you to join, right? They needed people. And this was early 2004, so there would have been a push to get people for Iraq and Afghanistan to go to war. So they weren't going to tell you exactly the 100% truth. I think the recruiter told my parents, oh, this is a safe job. Your son won't go to war because he'll have to train, right, in the States. 4 months after I got to my first duty station, I was deployed to Iraq. So it's not like this was, months or years later. It was 4 months later.
My friend's husband was deployed to Iraq as well, and twice, I believe. And I think he was Army. Okay. But I going in, that wasn't in the cards. And then it was like, right. Oh, you won't have to worry about that. And then he gets deployed.
That's always how they get you. I've told relatives of mine now that have enlisted and gone off into the numerous branches, do your research first. Find out what careers they're offering you. Is there real world applications for these skills you're about to learn? Because in my case, the only real world application for this is to go be a paramedic or try to be a firefighter or something like that, or work in a hospital. I don't want to do that because I saw enough at war coming home. I don't ever want to see that stuff again. Yeah. That's imprinted upon you forever. And I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah. So off of that, obviously you talk very openly about the traumatic impact of going to war, serving, especially that particular war. And I know that we're going to get into it a little bit later, but once you returned home and were able to get into civilian life, were there any other takeaways that you had from serving? Anything else that maybe informed things going forward?
I'm 38 now, and I've been like posting a lot online about this 20-year, anniversary I'm having of my first deployment to Iraq. I first deployed at the end of February of 2005, and I would spend 179 days deployed to Iraq. And they did that on purpose because if you hit 180 days, they have to give you a short tour ribbon, a short tour medal, and they have to pay you more money. So the DoD is notorious for cutting you at the 179th day, so they don't have to give you those things. And so I've been posting about that a lot. Back in the old Twitter days, I used to post a lot about my experience with the war, my experience with PTSD, because I find that therapeutic, like talking about it openly, constantly telling people like, look, if you don't want to go to therapy, find someone to talk to or start journaling all of this stuff. Traumatic experience will be with you forever. It doesn't just go away. You have to work at these things. And I've always been open about that since I think I first went to therapy in 2007. And that ever since then, I have always talked about, try to find someone to talk to. And if that therapist doesn't work for you, find another one. It's my biggest complaint with our healthcare industry that they don't talk about how hard it is to get a therapist and find one that works for you. Like that's part of the journey. And a lot of people just think if you go see one person, they're like, oh, I got what I wanted and I'm done. But that person may not have helped you or even listened to you. They just might have taken your health insurance or your money if you don't have good health insurance. And now you're out of luck. Like you didn't fix the root problems or get through any of the tremors that have come along with that traumatic event. But back to your question, having served in the military, I learned a lot about teamwork. I learned a lot about myself, how far I could push myself and do things on my own without the help of someone in your team. While I was deployed, I was always on my own. So I would go on a crew of 6 other people on an airplane, and I would have to know everything about my crew members, about the possibility of something going wrong. For an extended period of time of doing that, you learn so much about yourself and how you can depend upon yourself and not depend on someone else. So this was a really unique learning experience in the worst possible place on the planet. Like when you're in combat, you're learning all of these skills and all these things that the average American wasn't learning at that time. You're not learning that in college, you're not learning that in trade school, and you're sure not learning that, in high school. So this was a very weird learning curve and experience for me.
Ooh, quite the pressure cooker.
Yes.
Well, switching gears a little bit, we also wanted to know, you are Mailman Mike. But we wanted to know, was that your first civilian job when you came out of the service, or did you dabble in other things?
That was not my first civilian job. When I first left active duty to go into the reserves, I moved back to Milwaukee. So I was stationed at Little Rock Air Force Base in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I moved back to Milwaukee. I did some contracting work at the Milwaukee airport, which was a little bit of concrete work, a little bit of cleaning work. And then I went to college. While in college, I used my GI Bill. I didn't actually have a job. I didn't work. Also, the economy was really bad. So the recession was really bad. But my first job post-college was being a postal carrier.
Okay.
So I was a postal carrier for about a year, and I have a degree in history.
Me too. So,
hey, I love history so much.
I do. It has not helped me in terms of financial job security, but I love it. There's a whole story behind why. Anyway.
The same thing here, that, it didn't get me to where I wanted to go. So I was a postal carrier for about a year, and I was offered a job with the Department of Justice to archive court cases, to run their legal library, which was very small. It was all case textbooks and stuff like that. And I did that for 1 year, and I hated my life. Absolutely hated my life. And I was like, what am I doing? And I went back to the post office, which was an event all in itself, because it's not very easy to jump from agency to agency within the federal government. And the post office is technically outside of the federal government. So to get back to where I was a nightmare. But I made it, and I got back, and I'm incredibly happy because I love my job. I love the freedom it gives me, and I'm part of the community. So it's a great job. But yeah, that's it. I have not done anything else.
I love that you bring up community. I moved 2 years ago and I miss my regular mail carrier because my dog walks would coincide with his route and we would stop and chat. He would always like give my dog treats. And I was thinking about it recently because I was like, oh, I wonder how he's doing. But it just makes me wonder, like, do you have like, like your regulars that you see on your routes being part of the community in that way?
I do. I have a lot of regulars I see, a lot of elderly people that I see that are always at home, so they're waiting
Mm,
for the mailman. They want to talk to you, and I mean that's part of our responsibility to pay attention to our customers.
yeah.
Like if someone's not emptying their mailbox in a timely manner, maybe they need a wellness check and
Mm.
call the police. I have stories like that where I've had customers that fell in their homes, and
Mm.
the only person that could see that was the postal carrier.
Wow.
And right before COVID, in 2020, I had a man who fell at his door and laid there for a day until I delivered the mail. And I heard him like asking for help because he had like a mail slot to put the mail in. And the door was unlocked, and I came in, I picked him up, put him on his couch, and I was like, you have to call, the hospital, a nurse, somebody. I'm not leaving till you do that. Like, I'm not just going to let you, sit back down on your couch and you're fine. Because if I leave, who's to say you're not going to fall again?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to think about that all day. Like, oh man, do I got to go back and check on that guy and make sure he's alive? That type of stuff happens. You'll have, kids, like kids are the big one. They'll run out of the house, they take off and you're like, hey, like, are you lost? Are you supposed to go somewhere? Like parents, they might have missed it, if they leave the door open, particularly small children, right? Like we're not
Yeah.
talking middle school age kids, but little kids, yeah, you'll see them bolt into the street or like that's scary in
Yeah.
itself.
Oh,
Oh my goodness.
oh,
That's so important. You just made me think of a friend of ours is a librarian, and I'm going to add mail carrier to the list of jobs that on the surface you wouldn't think would have a bunch of crazy stories like that, but I'm sure you have so many.
Oh man, I don't know how far you guys want to go into this. I mean, some of it's traumatic in itself.
Mhm.
I've had customers come to the door naked.
I've heard that. I've heard that from people when I worked for Postmates who are doing food delivery who would have stories like
Oh
that. Or I
yeah.
think one of our friends who's an actor out here now, but she used to work for Pizza Hut. And I think she mentioned a couple of times delivering and people answering the door naked. And I was just like, what?
Yeah, I want to say the most scarring one that's ever happened to me that made me want to like pour gasoline in my eyes was I had probably a 75-year-old man open the door thinking I was a female carrier, so he was trying to flash her. And there was the man's crotch right in my face as I looked up, like, oh,
Oh no.
no, I'm not who you're looking for today, but I'll make sure to tell the postal inspectors because that's a crime.
That
Like
is a crime. Yes. Oh
that's a
boy.
crime. Like, yeah. The worst thing that probably has ever happened to me though is I got bit by a pit bull a couple years ago,
Mm,
Oh yeah.
and that was terrible and really messed with me in a way that I probably hadn't faced since my time at war, dealing with PTSD.
yeah.
The anxiety was so intense. The post office paid for all my medical bills and paid for me to see a therapist, and I'm going to take free therapy
Yeah,
if you're going to pay
absolutely.
for it. I'll go and talk about all those issues, but yeah, it took a while to get the anxiety to come back down. And even now to this day with dogs, it's not where it used to be.
Oh,
I'm still on high alert, and that's just something I'm going to have to keep working through to keep that anxiety as low as possible.
oh, that's a bummer.
So it's trauma on top of trauma, in this like little cake I have of my
Oh,
life.
I hate that for you. One, because I love dogs. Two, I hate when people are negligent owners. And three, I hate that you have to now live with, again, a stacking traumatic event. That sucks. That sucks. All of it sucks. I hate it.
Well, I can say that now because it was in 2023, so I'm 2 years, removed from this. And as angry as I was at the time, like, going to therapy and working through all of this, I feel better. I do. I feel much better than I did, right afterwards. Like I probably for about a month or two, I had reoccurring nightmares of this dog attacking me in like the craziest dreams. Like I'd be dreaming about something so boring and this dog would just show up and bite me. And
Oh
I'm like, oh
no.
my God,
He's
like
coming for you.
I gotta keep working on this in therapy. So it was
Your
intense.
poor brain. It's so
But yeah,
inundated. Oh, well, I'm glad you're working on it. I'm glad it's helping and you're seeing some impacts. And hopefully that doesn't happen again. People out there, manage your dogs.
Yeah,
Come on
leash
now.
your
Leash your
dogs.
dogs,
Leash your dogs.
train your dogs, leash your dogs, all of that. And this is coming from a dog lover. Be a responsible dog owner. Okay. All right. Well, this seems like a great time to transition. Let's talk Severance. Oh, Mike, we have so much to ask you about. So, as we said earlier, anyone who has watched the show knows it is trauma on trauma, layers of trauma, different types of trauma that people are experiencing. It's all informing all these characters that we know and love, and obviously affecting their decisions to elect the severance procedure. But we're also seeing how some of it is impacting characters that aren't severed, right? We're seeing even, our dedicated Luminites aren't all 100% mentally healthy and well. So we're going to talk about our fave characters. But first, I want to ask you, what brought you to the show Severance? Were you like an instant fan from episode 1, or did it take you a little while to get into it? Was there a moment that kind of hooked you and got you locked in?
I will say I was a fan from the jump. So I saw the teaser trailer, and I think the premise of the teaser was like, if you could separate your work life from your real life, would you? I think it posed that type of question. And of course, there's no one on the planet that wouldn't say yes to that, right? Like they love to leave work at home or at work and home at home. So seeing that, I was thinking about, my military service and work when I worked for the Department of Justice. Like I hated my job, and I wish that those 8 hours could fly by. So I want to say it was probably 4 or 5 minutes into the first episode where Mark starts crying in his car.
Yeah.
And that right there, regardless of whatever happens next in the show, like hooked me because it reminded me of my own life and reminded me of a moment where the stress was so great that nearly that same moment happened to me. I just wasn't in a car. I was in a shipping container in the desert in Iraq, 19 years old, like losing my mind, the stress, exuding out of my body. And I needed it to come out. And I sat there probably for about an hour and I just bawled my eyes out. And that right there, regardless of knowing the future, what happens with Mark, to me, that was like, okay, this is close to real. Like you're showing someone that's breaking down, having a moment that most of us will have in our lives over grief, loss. It's just something that it felt so real to me. So that was my first connection to it. Like, hey, this is very real. And I like this. Like, I like seeing this portrayed properly in television or movies. And that was something I hadn't seen before or had seen done correctly without making it a trope or making it, not as realistic as it could be.
I think the thing that was so interesting about that scene too was, one, it dropped you into that moment in the car out of nowhere. There was no context for it. You don't know what's wrong with this man. Did he just break up with somebody? Did he just lose somebody? Is he just having a bad day? Is he in pain? You don't know what's going on. And then all you see is him just kind of like pull it together, red-eyed, get out the car and go into work. And I remember in that moment just thinking, how many times have I, or really anybody in their adult life, just like come from something just so overwhelming, and then you just have to pull it together and go inside and do your job.
Have to.
From my experience at war, like I needed that. Like I needed that to continue on because my days at that point were 7 days a week. There were no weekends. There were no holidays. There was no time off. So all of this stress just compounds over and over and over again. And until you have that breaking point. And for me, I needed that. Like I needed to go away from, a half hour to an hour and just sit by myself. And that at war isn't easy, right? You're constantly under attack. You're constantly having the stress build. Mission after mission is flying. You don't have the chance to just go take a break or be a normal person anymore. So yeah, having that experience with Severance was like, okay, I want to see where this takes me. And at this point in my life, like I don't feel uncomfortable talking about this, or I don't even feel uncomfortable when I see this. It doesn't trigger me. It doesn't bring up those memories because I've been talking about this for so long. And I will continue to talk about it because it's healthy for me. And it makes me think that if I talk about this, it'll convince someone else to talk about their trauma, their grief as a way of getting past it. Like you have to work through it instead of bottling it up. You have to let it out. And he let it out. I let it out. That's, what really sold me on the show.
Do you find the show as a whole cathartic to watch now that you've done so much of your own processing and it's not so triggering? Is it cathartic, or is it just kind of like just generally relatable?
It's a little bit of both. Like it's a little relatable and then it's also cathartic to see. I hate to say this, but it's like I like to see these real traumatic moments happening to people. And when you see them react to that, and again, not in like, this fake Hollywood way where it's like, oh, it's solved in the next episode and you never saw the work that went into it. They've taken the steps to show that one, therapy is hard work because Mark's not going, right?
Yeah.
Like we find that out in the first season. He skips it or stops going because he doesn't like the therapist because he had a mustache. Like he's like, I don't trust a mustache. Maybe that's why he doesn't like Milchek so much.
Ooh.
But right. But it was something where getting to see that, you're like, okay, they're doing this, as correct as they can with this world they've built, with the procedure that doesn't exist in our world to separate, the consciousness of two people. So this was, very fascinating to watch. And then it also gives you kind of that like jealousy where it's like, man, if this existed when I was in the service, I would have done this in a heartbeat because I would not have to think about my time at war. I wouldn't have had the problems I had post, serving at war. So this would have been cool to have.
Yeah. Well, speaking of therapy and you being so open about going to therapy and the importance of it, there is definitely a lot of meme culture around men not going to therapy. Rodnesha has quotes in her notes.
I don't know if you've seen any of these, Mike. I don't know if you've seen some of them, but I see them all the time. And there was a point where they were happening a lot. Now it's just kind of dwindled and it'll be random comments, but I just find them so funny and clever the way some people.
The one I like is men will literally dress up like a bat and fight criminals and costumed villains by night instead of going to therapy. Batman. But so anyway, with that in mind, do you think other people tried therapy before getting severed? We know Mark, he tried. Are there therapists in Kier PE, or is that like counter to Lumen's mission to try to get more people to sever? Maybe they don't want people to go to therapy.
That's my thinking.
Do you think anybody in Kier is going to therapy?
Probably not now, right? Since they've created the severance procedure, I highly doubt they are advertising your local therapist to come in for an hour and talk about your feelings and trauma and all of that. I'd never thought about it that way until you just said that, but that is one interesting conspiracy theory for, Kier PE, like where are all the therapists? Where have they gone? I would assume that, some of these characters probably tried to go to therapy, just like we all probably try, and then we give up because it's difficult. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to, sit there and talk about your feelings or traumatic events that may have happened to you or the loss of a loved one. And if you don't find the right therapist, you might be turned off from it completely and then say, you know what? I'm out. Like, I'll go deal with this in my own way, which then ends to very bad situations where you have, substance abuse, you have possible domestic violence, you have possible just violence upon yourself where you begin to harm yourself just because you cannot deal with the issues by yourself. Like some of this does require, medical help. And I do consider mental health care, medical health care. So I would assume that there are people within Kier that tried and probably gave up, and that's how they became severed, because it was pitched to them as you won't have to deal with it anymore. It's gone. And we see that with Mark. Mark does that because he can't handle the grief of losing his wife, which we find out in the first season. Spoilers, sorry to anybody that hasn't gotten that far. But yeah, he does that because he can't handle it. And I had this theory, which was kind of blown away with season 2, that he enjoyed being himself for those 8 hours while he's not at work, because he got to drink and he got to wallow in it the entire time. He didn't have to go and impress somebody or try to get better. He could be that piece of shit the entire time and not worry about it. I mean, his sister presses him, but he gives up. He doesn't, really fight her too much in the first season on going back to therapy, seeing the therapist. He just is like, well, I got the severance procedure, so here I am. I'm fine. And that's making me healthy.
All right. So since we're on the subject of Mark, let's just go ahead and jump into Mark Scout. We're going to talk about each of these characters, but we're going to start with Mark because let's just face it, Mark is a mess. Mark, especially in season 1. And yeah, there are things, there's reasons, but kind of like you said, Mike, I mean, he's using a lot of excuses to kind of be a jerk to everybody. We understand he's in grieving mode, but he won't say it, but an alcoholic. He's definitely drowning his emotions in substances and just trying to disconnect, right? So first question would be like, do you think Severance is right for someone like him? And it's interesting because I never thought about Severance possibly being marketed as an alternative to therapy, but now I could totally see that as part of their marketing. And like, it's not just about like cutting off your brain, but if you are someone in distress, you don't need to go to therapy anymore. You can just shut your brain down. So yeah, so do you think Severance is right for someone like him, or could be right for someone like him, maybe used better? And do you think he used Severance as a scapegoat? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but just to clarify that a little more.
Yeah, it's hard to say, if ever using severance is the right procedure, right? Because the issue is always going to come back. Like whatever you're trying to hide is always going to come to the surface. And we've seen that with his character. We've seen that with other characters. I do think it, for him, was the scapegoat, right? Like he could easily say to the world or to his family members, look, I'm on a good path. Like I have a job, I'm making an income, I'm a productive member of society. Let me be this guy for 8 hours of my day or for however long, he's not at work, and everything else will be fine. It'll fall into place. There's no reason for me to, go back to therapy or fix the problem. And even we see him, going out with the doula.
Our favorite Alexa.
Yeah, he just can't like get to that next stage with her because he's stuck in that piece of shit mode where it's like, I want to just be this guy and wallow in self-pity and not really get better or move on. Like grieving is hard. When you lose someone, you lose a family member, you can't replace them. You can't go find someone to replace his wife. And his sister's trying to set him up and do these things, and he just can't let that go. And even when you see him tear up the picture, he's still not letting go of Gemma and saying, like, this is goodbye. It's just, I want to make Alexa happy. So she'll stay here with me, even though I'm drunk and not properly thinking what I'm doing. And we see him then later go through that grieving process of putting the picture back together and talking about the qualities of his wife that he really loved. And he's not dealing with it properly. So severance is just hiding the problem. It's just hiding what's underneath. And that might be Lumen's goal, is you're getting someone to hide all of that so they're productive at work, right? They want to be there more. Like, oh, if I'm there more, I can't think about this thing, or I can't think I'm, heartsick or grieving, or I'm a mess up in my own life. I can just be there. And maybe that's what they want. They want that person to go from being the part-time, innie and outie to the full-time innie. Like, you're never going to leave here. And we see a little bit of that in season 2. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that, because as you were talking about it, I was thinking, it sounds like the, opposite of help, that Severance is prolonging his process because he gets to stay in that piece of mode. But how long can you live like that? How long can you survive like that? So yeah, that's so interesting that maybe that is an option we propose to you later on. Well, why don't you just
stay here forever,
be an innie all the time? Yeah.
Well, we see that with season 1. Like he's been at this 2 years.
Yeah,
he's been severed. You see the cracks start to form where he's genuinely questioning what he does at work. He's having an issue, following the orders within Lumen. You start to see these cracks form, and then he becomes very curious about reintegration and puts him in a situation where he witnesses a murder, which is now more trauma in his life.
And nobody's talking about that murder. Sorry. That bugs me so much.
Well, we learn that, Lumen's got their hands everywhere. So if that body disappeared, Lumen's just going to say, well, we shipped that person to another building, so they're gone, right? Grainer's gone, so he didn't die. We sent him elsewhere, which, we could see that being a possibility with how untrustworthy Lumen is.
But it's so wild, like you're saying, that because things keep stacking, Mark hasn't even processed the fact that he witnessed a murder. Like, I was expecting to hear more about it in season 2, and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, the last time I saw Ragabi, he was bashing this dude's head in. It's wild to me. It's like there's so much traumatic stacking that he's like, I don't even know where to, one thing at a time, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's going to be, I would suggest Mark Scout gets a very good therapist or a few now that he's witnessed a murder. He's now possibly killed a person, whether it's accidental or not. And he might need to talk to some people because I don't think severance is going to save you, unfortunately.
No. Absolutely not. Okay, just to wrap up, Mike, because we talked a little bit about how Mark is managing his grief in season 2, which is not much better. But Mike, if you were friends with Mark Scout, what would be your advice to him prior to or even after the process of severance or reintegration? Like, if you could give him advice, what would it be?
Oh, prior to the procedure, I would tell him, make sure you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's if you're going to do this. Having, served with numerous friends of mine who either have not gone to therapy, have gone and done, things to themselves, whether it's drinking or drugs, and witnessing that, you can't stop them, right? You try as a friend, you try to say, hey, like, you can go to the VA, you can do these things, and they don't want to do it. You can't force a person to do these things. So in Mark's case, I think the mistake like Devin makes or Rickon makes is they try to force him into these situations, like, the no food dinner party. And I always felt that was like almost like an intervention.
Oh, an intervention, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I felt like that was an intervention to get him to talk about being severed and why he's severed. And he's seeing points of view that are either positive or negative for severing. And he gets very upset about that because his mind is already made up. Like, I'm doing this for me. That's all that matters. I don't need to hear your point of view. I don't need to hear the World Mind Collective point of view. That upsets him. He lashes out. So if I was that friend, I would say, look, make sure you're educated on this. If that's the course of action you're going to go, then, peace be with you and go do it. Now, in that situation, if you start to see these cracks form and he confides at which he does in his sister, well, yeah, then maybe you should try to pull them out and, pull back from doing, that type of behavior to yourself. And if you can convince that friend to do so, then it's great. If you can convince him to say, hey, so you are leaving Lumen, like, I'll help you do whatever you need to do. But we don't necessarily get that in season 2. We kind of get like him hanging around more and more, or his sister kind of prodding him to stay. And we got to find Gemma, and see if she's still alive. Like, there's all these little things that come into clear view of Lumen pulling all these strings. Whether we as viewers know it or the characters know it, I think they're really pulling Mark into whatever direction he wants to go in. And I think that's part of the problem with Mark is he's looking for all of these choices, but these choices are already made for him because he decided to get severed 2 years prior, and now he doesn't have actual choice.
Facts.
Okay, shall we move on to Helly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can get into Helly versus Helena, but we'll focus on season 1 for now. So, as we mentioned with a lot of the characters, we see signs of distress with Helly to the point, obviously, where she is willing to try to take her life. What are your thoughts on the internal trauma of Lumen's business practices and, how innies could, if they could at all, possibly manage that?
Oh boy. I don't know if Lumen is like flying by the seat of their pants when it comes to the innies, or if they've actually thought this out. They seem to want the workforce, or they need the workforce for some specific reason. Within MDR, we can see what MDR is doing because of season 2. The other departments, we don't really know what they're doing. We know O&D makes things for the company. They make things for other rooms on the floor. They make items for upstairs and downstairs. The goat department, we still really don't know if the goats are only for the sacrifice or they're for something else. But we also don't know if those people leave.
Yeah.
Like, from my point of view, I don't think they leave. I think they're there and they're always there.
Agreed.
So if that's Lumen's case, like, you're eventually going to have problems from the company's point of view, because if you put someone in captivity, eventually they're going to want to break out. And we see that with Helly specifically. Like, she figures it out pretty early on, within 5 to 10 minutes of her orientation. She's like, I want to leave. Like, I don't want to be here. Something's wrong. Like, let me out. And they won't let her out. Like, they keep her there, and it just continues to create a bad environment for the rest of the workers, because she becomes the bad apple in convincing Irving, Dylan, and Mark that something's wrong in the work environment, which they maybe they had seen those cracks, but they haven't. They were like, well, forget it. Like, let's just keep mining our data and work. But yeah, she's the big outlier compared to our other characters we've met.
We've talked, Kali and I, in previous episodes about how most likely every innie that has come in has clearly had this adjustment period of like trying to rebel, trying to escape, because Mark knows all Helly's tricks when she gets there. But Helly's determination seems to be pretty singular compared to the other innies. And part of me wonders if that is because of who she is on the outside, and she knows this place is full of shit. And so her innie,
deep down,
yeah, like she's going through this whole other traumatic experience, just being the heir to this crap hole industry. So it makes me wonder if there's an internalized part of her that's like, I know this place is full of it and I'm not staying. And come hell or high water, I am out of here.
Clearly, she's got some sort of, whether it's daddy issues, or mommy issues, because we don't even know who her mother is,
right,
or if she's had an experience with her mother. But clearly she has a very strained relationship with her father. And you can see by the end of season 1, we kind of learn, Helena did this to impress her father, to become Helly and to have Helly there. Was done for the company and for her dad, and seen as like, oh, I'm going to do this because I'm going to eventually be in charge of the company, so I have to prove myself. Whereas we don't know if James ever had to prove himself to his father, right? We don't know if there's a dynamic there between, a male and a male and a male and a female. Like, we don't know yet. Like, we see that in our life, our lives, where it becomes much harder for a woman to crack through than, the firstborn son, let's say, right? They'll either give their son the job and say, oh, he's meant for it, even though he could be terrible. And the firstborn daughter will be the right choice, or just let them work, at their own capacity and see what happens. But she's definitely reaching to impress him, and it fails. It blows up because Helly breaks the system and rebels against her and the father, which is fantastic television.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to kick it over to Irving and Bert. And I lumped them together because there's still a lot we don't really know about these two and how they came to be severed. We've gotten bits and pieces here and there, but it's still a bit of a mystery. But we did hear Bert mention that he wanted the chance to essentially have a clean slate, experience life as a different person, or as his husband said, like get into heaven. And Irving, I wonder a lot. I want to ask you your thoughts, Mike, because once I found out that Irving, it appears, is ex-military, I had to wonder if that may have played a part in what brought him to Severance. And I don't know entirely if it is that or if it's other things, but what are your thoughts? Do you think that that could maybe be something?
I think so with Irving. When I originally saw the trunk and then the pictures inside of his dad, which is really John Turturro's dad, which was a fantastic little piece of trivia and really touching that he had done that and allowed the show to use that imagery. I started to think about, my own life and being in the military and, would I do something like this? And I kept coming back to the answer, yes. At my lowest moments, to remove that trauma and the depression that came with after going to war, or the triggers like I can't do fireworks, I can't fire a firearm anymore, I have to kind of be away from those things. It's like, yeah, I would probably do this. And if Irving, we've only been told that the only difference with the Severance world is the chip itself. That if the rest of the world played out the way our world played out, well, this man could have served in Vietnam. He could have served in the first Gulf War. War, or he could have served in the post 9/11 war. So there's a lot of traumatic experience that could have happened to him at that time. And if he's also suppressing, his own internal feelings, if he is a gay man, then the military was only going to suppress that even more, particularly in that time, because Don't Ask, Don't Tell doesn't change, I think, until 2009 or 2010 under the Obama administration. So he would have been in a really difficult situation where he could not have been himself at any time in the military. So that might have added to it as well, like where you feel this loneliness. And we get that in season 2 where he tells Bert that, like, I've never had this love before and I want to have it now. And it's so heartbreaking to see, because that's real to real. I mean, that's real life. Like, we have individuals that have served their country that could not love the people they wanted to love because our government decided to say this was wrong. And you have to suppress that if you wanted to continue your career. And a lot of people did, and that made them miserable. And that can drain a person. And I think Irving, in his case, if that was his path, then I think he would have wanted to, suppress that even further down and go and be a productive member of society. And he gets this job and becomes excellent at what he does. Like, he's viewed as, outside of Dylan, he's viewed as the most experienced refiner, right? Like, he knows all of the passages in the handbook. He knows the Lumen mythology. And I think, his outie knows that his innie is successful. Otherwise, he still wouldn't be there.
It's interesting that you say that, Mike, because that means, there's multiple levels of external trauma that he's trying to process as a military man who served and as a gay man who's closeted. And I remember that being an early indicator to me. And I don't remember at what point we talked about it, but I do remember before they revealed it, I was like, I think maybe in his outie life, he's closeted.
Yeah.
Because he's living by himself. He seems pretty solitary and isolate. And then once they showed that he was military, I was like, yeah.
I served with a flight doctor that was a gay man. And, he never told us outright, but he always used they and them when it came to partners. And it was also, even at 20 years old, it was heartbreaking for me to understand that and see that, like, oh, you can't tell me because you're afraid of
that you'll report
that person, or someone will overhear you say that, and then your career's gone and thrown out the window, and they're going to probably take everything from you. So seeing that in Irving, and you see him alone in his home, and you start to think backwards a little bit, and you're like, okay, this is a person who hasn't ever felt comfortable to come out to anyone. It's a weight that a lot of veterans live with, that couldn't come out and couldn't say, they loved a man or a woman. And unfortunately, we haven't corrected that.
Yeah. And I've always thought that was wild, because to be so patriotic, I mean, I know there's different reasons people join the military, but point being, there are many queer people who love their country and want to serve in this way. And then to still, I mean, it just reminds me historically of the many, different culture groups that have served in the military and been disregarded, right? But ultimately, it's like, it's just such an awful feeling to be like, I love this country. I want to support this country. I want to lend my service to this country, and then come back and be absolutely ostracized. It makes no sense to me.
It's truly heartbreaking, and it really messes with me, because I'm so full of joy from veterans I've talked to who served their country, whether the war sucked or they've gotten on by the government. They're still proud to have worn that uniform. How dare people try to take that away from individuals? And I think, again, Irving's going through that. Like, there's part of that where he's probably trying to forget things that happened to him or were said to him while in service. And that happens to a lot of people, unfortunately, because the military has done that for decades.
Ugh. Boo.
Boo. Boo
indeed.
We're going to stick with Irving a little bit, because we also have him lumped with Dylan. So, in season 1, we didn't know much about outie life, but we get more of it in season 2. And both Irving and Dylan experience trauma in the form of grief/loss from within the lumen walls.
I think essentially, sorry, I'll fill it in. I think essentially, oh my gosh. I think essentially where that thought was going is, again, going back to like grief internally, like from within Lumen, and the fact that these two have both suffered losses and the traumatic impacts that it's having on they're any characters, right? And we see another version of a wanting to unalive, right, themselves, not as literally as we saw with Helly, but in a form, right? Irving is willing to just walk out the door when his grief hits him. And I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts on how you saw that from your perspective,
Well,
especially how they deal with it, because they both deal with their grief differently.
right. Irving specifically is dealing with the heartbreak, right? He's not able to continue that relationship with Bert. Now, Bert's, he's gone. He's retired and forced out of Lumen. And Irving is so heartbroken that he himself wants to leave, right? He wants to remove himself from that because he cannot deal with those thoughts, which is almost a parallel to the severance procedure itself, right? He's trying to not remember it. So he's thinking, if I leave, I'll never remember it, in the same way where Mark comes to work and doesn't have to remember the love of his wife, right? Because he's not Mark Scout anymore, he's Mark S. So it's very fascinating to see Irving go through that because he's so heartbroken. And we've all been there. We've had relationships that have, failed and not worked, and boyfriends and girlfriends that have broken up with us. And in Irving's case, he just can't see the next step forward, right? He's like, I just can't do this, until Dylan says to him, but you're my thing. Like, I need you here. You make me happier when you're here. And, Irving quips back, well, I'm your favorite perk. You see their friendship. You see it really grow even more in season 2 than we get a little bit in season 1, where, again, Irving's like the older brother who's no nonsense, no jokes, no games. We're not doing anything until Bert is taken away. And when Bert's taken away, Irving's like, you know what? Let's burn this place to the ground. Let's get out because I'm so upset. Dylan, on the other hand, wants to see his kid again that he didn't know he had. So it's the love, that's that hug that he gets from that child that cannot be replaced. Anybody else could have hugged him and it probably wouldn't feel the same. It's this small version of him that hugs him and says, I love you, without even knowing you, right? I don't know you, but I know you're my thing. And that changed Dylan forever. I think going forward, there was no way Dylan was going to play along with Lumen until he was enticed by Milchek with his wife. Dylan can't handle it anymore because he's losing everyone. He's losing Irving, and he's on the verge of losing Mark and Helly. And then what does he do?
So on that thread, Mike, what's your take on how relationships serve where PTSD is concerned? It doesn't even have to be romantic relationships necessary, but like, as you mentioned, for Dylan and Irving, like a friendship, or again, a partner or a child. Like, it's in media, a lot of times we see relationships getting in the way or being a conflict to people with PTSD, right? You're always seeing these depictions of like people going off on their spouses or, what have you. But what's your take on how relationships can aid in that?
Well, with Dylan and Irving specifically, you can see, Dylan pleading with him, like, you're my friend, you're my brother, I want you here. And that's, again, something true to real life. When you are in something together, you are more willing to go to bat for that person, to pick them up, to, hold them up and make sure they're okay. That's a big thing in the veteran community. Like, we try to look out for each other and say, look, if something's not right, I'm going to call you out on that. I'm going to say, hey, you're drinking too much, you're doing these things. Now, that might not get you to therapy or to get you to fix the problem, but it's at least someone that's saying to you, hey, I'm going to check on you and I'm going to be here with you until things get better, or you get your head on right, and I'm not going to allow you to indulge in this bad behavior. And Dylan and Irving seem to have that same wavelength in season 2, where they both need each other. And I think Irving needed Dylan more, right? Dylan, got to have that hug of the child, and he didn't even have to leave the building, essentially, right? Like, he didn't have to go on the OTC. They woke him up at home, where, Irving had to go out into the world and see the person he cared about the most with someone else. And that really set him back until he comes back inside Lumen and he tells Dylan, and Dylan's like, you can't leave me. Like, I need you here. I need you to be here to help me get through so I can help you get through this. For me, from my perspective, that's real life. I've had great mentors in my life that I served in the military with that picked me up at terrible moments in my life and made sure I was okay. And to this day, still check on me and call me and text me. And, even if it's just, hey, brother, how you doing? Like, it doesn't have to be this great, drawn out conversation. It can just be simple, simple text or simple talk where you're just checking on that person. And we tend to forget this in our normal lives, to check on our friends, to check on our family. We think everybody's okay until the issue becomes so big. And then it's like, oh, I should have checked on this person. I should have called and asked how they were doing before the signs are, I want to leave.
Yeah.
And in Irving's case, I want to, unalive myself from this situation because I'm so broken. And, Dylan's really trying to keep him there and keep him in the moment and in the present with him. So that is, a very interesting relationship that then spirals out of control.
It illustrates, I think, the importance of having that person. And then they also show what happens when you don't have that person. Because I was just thinking as we're talking about this, that had Irving been there when Dylan had his loss of, my wife is going to leave me, right? Yeah. He might not have decided, in a sense, he came to the same conclusion, right? He was going to resign. That's effectively ending your life. So yeah, I think that's really interesting that they kind of end up having a very similar journey and they started out so different from each other.
Yeah, he really could have used, Irving's experience, their expertise in that moment, even without having the relationship, right? Like he didn't have to be married, but he could have helped remind Dylan. First of all, you're being played by Mr. Milchek. Like,
Yeah.
Irving knew that. Like Irving figured that out as we go along in season 2. And even in season 1, you see that, where he lashes out at him for not being severed and not getting to keep his memories and do these things. I think it would have been a great boost to Dylan to have Irving's opinion, at least to tell him, hey, pump the brakes here. Like you're overreacting because you're still going to see your wife. It's just not you, right? Like it's still part of your life. You're just like, don't give up on me now. And that's kind of what we're seeing from Dylan is he's giving up because Irving's not there to say, don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm realizing now that you're saying that so much of what Dylan was going through, especially in season 2, was looking for that anchor because he found it in Irving. And then as soon as Irving left, it's like he just was adrift. And then he tried to desperately cling to Gretchen, though I feel like somewhere in his mind, he had to know that wasn't going to hold. But it's like, I need an anchor. I need something. Right. And then that left. And then he just was adrift. So that's a good perspective.
Moving on to Rickon and Milchek and Cobell. Rickon potentially starting a cult. Milchek, he's dealing with facing down discrimination at work. And then Cobell essentially being raised as like a child soldier in a cult. Give us your thoughts. I mean, that's a whole lot. Yeah. But just to touch on our other characters.
We'll just go in order because I have a great Milchek/Trammell story.
Okay.
But Rickon feels like, those cheap self-help book authors that are just trying to sell you this product. And it's like, oh, I have all the answers to the universe. If you just buy my book and listen to what I have to say, and we'll get you there. I don't think up until season 2 or like that mid-season 2 where he has the meeting with Natalie, I don't think Rickon was ever attached to Lumen. I just think he was kind of aloof and Devin loves him and he's Mark's brother-in-law and he just was, doing his self-help books and making some money off of it and kind of successful from where they live and the home they live and the lifestyle they have. So clearly, he's on his own thing. Now, maybe he can tell that Lumen is up to the same game that he is until they want to write him a check. And it's like, hey, the money might be good here if I continue to, play this game with them.
So here's a question, Mike. Did you read the UUR?
I did.
Okay. Do you think that Rickon is acting out of his own traumatic past of being like the son of these crazy parents who essentially got arrested in front of him for performance art?
Right.
Kali and I's theory is that they were actual criminals and masking it as performance art.
Yeah.
But it seems like he too is also just kind of acting out of these traumas that he's never really come to terms with.
Now that you say that, thinking about that, if he was a child watching his parents commit, let's say robberies, right? Like robbing banks or something like that and getting away with something like, that would have a severe traumatic impact on him going forward. And then to be raised outside of the normal household or have any parents around would probably do some interesting damage to him or his imagination, may have made him really play outside of that. But yeah, I don't know. It's been fascinating to read that and to see what they've created with Rickon because to me, again, he feels like the snake oil salesman in the same way that Kier feels like the snake oil salesman, right? Like he's trying to sell you something that he himself knows is bullshit. But it could also be a story he's told himself because of the traumatic moments he's had in his life. I think there's one story in there where he stumbles across a dead body and he's like, oh, this man's just asleep. And it's like, no, he drank himself to death and he's dead.
He's dead.
So yeah, I think part of it is he's trying to mask, what bad things have happened to him, and he's just found a way to capitalize on it monetarily, right? Like I can write these stories and say I'm the better man because I went through this self-help book and I'm selling it to you now. And these people have existed forever to try and convince us that they have the answers when they really don't.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to Cobell or Milchick?
Let's go with Cobell.
Okay.
Cobell as the child soldier is fascinating because it does, if she's severed, Lumen is full of liars. They like to lie. They like to hide the truth. So if she was essentially a child soldier within this cult, like she's going to have reason to want to not remember these things, to have to go through this. And when we see her hometown, if that is to be her hometown, we don't know exactly if that's where she was born or if that's just where she's raised. It seems to be a very rough environment, both for its climate, but then it's a town that's addicted on a drug. It's addicted on ether, and it decimates that town. So it probably messed with her mentally when you're seeing addicts probably try to sell everything they have to get a little bit of that ether, and then when Lumen leaves, that makes it a ghost town and the damage is even worse. But I think from her story, she's already gone. Like she's off to the girls' school. And then what I thought was so fascinating about episode 8 with her showing that, her work was stolen from her. This happens in our real life. Like scientists have had their work stolen by massive corporations repeatedly and paid pennies for it, even though they created, let's say, a vaccine or a new scientific advancement. So when this happens to Harmony, we are to feel empathy for her and go, oh man, and that rage, that hate, it's got to go somewhere. Where did it go, right? We really don't see her lash out until later into season 1, where she's mad about the board that she doesn't get to meet them. But why didn't she meet them before? Why was she hidden away from them? I could see her having, resentment, anger, numerous issues with how she's been treated, but she's the good soldier, right? To continue on, to hide those feelings, to push those feelings down, to keep going until you're going to be given recognition. Like that's something, that exists in the actual military. There are promotions that are given to people that they shouldn't have been given, right? Like they didn't deserve them. Maybe they had a family name. Maybe they knew somebody the right way and they got to the next step, and the person that really did all the heavy lifting doesn't get it, and they're stuck just pushing forward to try and get there. And I see that in her a lot, where you see that in season 2, she's really struggling to reassert control. Like she controlled the severed floor. Now she controls nothing. And you see that with her talking to Innie Mark, her talking to Outie Mark, her talking to Devin when she abused the relationship with both of them as, a second person. Yeah, I could see her having some severe traumatic issues, or when she's fired, she lashes out and destroys the Kier shrine, who she's been idolizing since she was a child, and she just destroys it all in a fit of pique because she's mad. That's fascinating because we don't know where that goes or what her true motivations are. And, that's heartbreaking for her because she's lost what she's created and then continued to lose it because Lumen owns it all.
I could talk about Harmony forever. All right, Milchick. Share.
All right. Mr. Milchick. Mr. Milchick is a very fascinating company man.
Yeah.
Like he seems to believe and eat up everything they tell him, where he goes along with every scheme, every game, every way to keep the workers working, even when he's abused by Miss Cobell in season 1. And in this moment, he's kind of looked down upon a little bit until she needs him. Like when she needs Seth Milchek, he doesn't want to talk to her because she's been fired.
Yeah.
She's been removed from the equation. He's in charge now. He's the boss. And we kind of fear him in season 1. He's like almost omnipresent. I know there were a lot of theories that there was the multiple Milcheks, that there could have been many of them. But obviously we find out in season 2 there are doors that open to places we don't normally see, which is a very cool thing to see in real life. But I will tell you this quick Trammell story. So I had seen Trammell in a play called Meet Fan in New York City last November. Mark Geller and I went to go see him. And when the play was over, we went backstage to talk with him. And I knew a little bit of season 2 from getting to go to the set and see some filming. How I tell people this is it's like reintegration. I knew bits and pieces, but I didn't have the whole thing. So Trammell meets with us, and he kind of remembered me from San Diego Comic-Con, and we're being pleasant with each other, and I'm telling him a couple things, and he just goes on to tell Mark and I about the black Kier paintings, or the blackface paintings.
Yeah.
And I had no clue. Like, at first I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, they're doing blackface? Like, oh my God.
You're like, oh, Severance is taking a turn.
Well, and then I see Mark just go pale white, and he's like, oh my God, they put me in blackface? Like, my career is over.
No.
Like, oh no. Like, this is bad. And Trammell, I'm sorry if you're listening, Trammell, that I'm telling this story, but Trammell goes on to tell me that Ben and Dan sat him down and asked his opinion about this. If this was to be a good idea, or would this be insulting? How would you feel to do this? And Trammell had said that if he was uncomfortable, they were going to pull that out of the show, that they weren't going to do it because they wanted him to, have it be genuine and not, just be something that they viewed as insulting or a trope. And, I'm backstage at this theater, and he's telling me this, and I'm just like, well, what's going to happen? And he's like, oh, you're going to see, Mr. Milchek go through this corporate environment and how it doesn't like him and how it's keeping him from where he wants to go. So as we see this in season 2, I kept that in the back of my mind, like, when is this coming? When is this coming? And then it happens, and Trammell's performance is just so great because he's showing you something that exists everywhere. Like, not just in corporate America, it exists in the military, it exists in our social circles, it exists everywhere. And he is just spot on with trying to either fit in or be a chameleon, or, shove it back in their faces when he tells Drummond, to eat shit. All of these little things that happen in real life that people don't get to do, right? Like, we don't get to act like that normally. Like, and if we do, we're removed from the situation. We're fired, we're kicked out, we're ostracized. He does it, and he's not removed because, again, he's viewed, whether they like it or not, he's viewed as an authority figure inside of Lumen, even though he's not given the respect that he has earned. And he's made mistakes. Like, he's cost MDR a lot of time and a lot of problems with his own initiatives, the original OTC, but the issues he's facing in the workplace are something that I never thought I would see in a science fiction show, if we're going to, put it that way.
Yeah,
like,
right.
This is something that, we don't really touch on. Like, yes, the original Star Trek, gave us black actors in a predominantly white television show, or Asian Americans as well, and put it in our faces like we are going to be a better society. We are going to be a more inclusive society. And we kind of let that kind of just sit in its own thing. Like, oh, that's just science fiction. That's not real life, but it is real life. And Severance is doing something where it's showing you this still exists today.
Yeah. It's so wild because Milchek is the one character we've not seen hide nor hair of outie life. We don't know what that backstory is going to be. We don't know what brought him to Lumen. And part of me is like, oh man, what could Milchek's past possibly have been? What traumas could he have possibly undergone to take him to Lumen? But then another part of me is like, or maybe it's just that he's a black man and that's the trauma.
I mean, I think that might be a little bit, of it as well, that it's the experience he's had as a black man in this in this environment or universe that they are in. But I think we get a little bit of his background with his experience with Miss Wong, right? Like how he treats her. We kind of see, or we can infer from, this is what he went through, like as a child. And if he went through this as a child, like he's been in the system the entire time. And does he have an actual life? Like, we don't know, right? Like when he has that phone call with Mark and Mark's like, I just needed a day. And it looks to break him like, I don't get a day. I haven't had a day off.
When have I last had
Ever.
a day? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When have I got, like, Miss Cobell, I got to go and live this whole second life as the neighbor and as the goofy shopkeep. He has not had that, right? Like there's got to be some, jealousy there. Like that's
right. Especially if he grew up in whatever this church of Kier is, if we're inferring that he had a similar upbringing or entry into Lumen as Miss Wong, it's been his whole life.
I think, and that's how I felt with, seeing him, he's coming in his motorcycle jacket and all of those things. Like, are you actually going home or are you off doing things for Lumen, right? Like, are they making you go do more? Like, we see him driving around, giving the baskets of pineapples out and apologies or firing people. But are you truly going home or are you going back to Lumen? Like, that's another thing we don't know. We've only seen Harmony Cobell's life on the outside, and it wasn't even a real life. She was a messy neighbor to Mark to spy on Mark, like, because they needed him. We don't know. Like, that's what's fascinating.
Sorry, what you just said, I'm sorry, it just ticked a light bulb off in my brain because I'm like, I never thought about Mrs. Selvig being like an outlet for Harmony to basically cosplay a normal life, right? Like we knew about the spying part, but I think it was always interesting because we'd be like, why is she doing this whole bit where she's like, because Mark doesn't know her on the outside, right? She could have just been Harmony Cobell and just whatever. But she intentionally created this whole other alter ego that is so the opposite of who she is. And I wonder if that's like a trauma outlet for her. Like, I never thought about it that way.
I kind of thought of it as a trauma outlet, like she's getting to be someone else, right? She doesn't have to be her. She doesn't have to have her history with Lumen. She doesn't have to have her history with her mother, with her aunt, with any of her, her childhood friends where, they're all on ether. She gets to delete that, right? She gets to essentially be someone else for that moment in the same way. Again, it's so parallel to the severance procedure. They are all somebody else when they sever. It comes back to this like simple thing. If you met yourself, would you like yourself? Right? Like if you could clone your actual person and you talk to them, would you actually be friends? And that's such a fascinating thought experiment because that's what they're doing essentially. But then the experiment changes because they don't become you, right? They're not the same experience you had as a child, as an adolescent, as a teen, as an adult, all of that. Like it's fascinating what Dan and the writers have done to show us these parallels, even though it's the same thing with the show, the severance procedure, the double life, like all of that. It's really fascinating to think about.
Ooh, okay. We're going to try to lightning round these last few because I know we've had you for a while, but we definitely want to give the listeners a look at all the cool stuff that you've gotten to do on the inside as just Mailman Mike, who gets to experience the world of Severance. Okay, so you have indicated that there is a story about how you met Ben at Comic-Con. And then I've also heard a story about a Kier costume. What are these stories? What are they? Give it to us. Give it to us.
The San Diego Comic-Con story from 2022 is one I've never told publicly, but back in the old Twitter days, Severance fans had found it. So there's a few prominent Severance accounts that knew of this, and it was like, okay, I'm happy to share a little bit there, but then the rest has been for me. So I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 2022, and they promoted the show by doing an offsite of the sets, like a smaller version of the sets that you could walk through and kind of like play out. And then they did a panel in Ballroom 20 at San Diego. And I was hooked on the show. I loved it. So I was like, I'm going to go to that panel and I'm going to try to do the offsite thing. The first few days, I failed to get into the offsite, and I just kind of threw my hands up like, forget it. Like, I'll just do the panel and I'll live through the photographs I see on Twitter. So I go to the panel and I'm like 3 hours early, because with everything with San Diego, you have to just sit and wait because it's so big, it's so massive. You can't just show up like 5 minutes early, like, I'm going to get a seat and be ready to go. So I sit through like 3 hours of panels. I keep moving up every time. And this whole time I'm thinking to myself a question I want to ask. You know, if they do a Q&A, I want to ask this question. So I'm trying to like keep it in my head. And of course, the security people will not let you go up to the microphone with like a piece of paper, your phone out, anything. So I have to like say this back to the security people verbatim, which to the lady, I said it perfectly. When I get up to the microphone, my brain just like leaks out of my body and I'm just standing there like, and it felt like forever. It was like 3 seconds. The question was about severance, you know, being written. Was it a response to clinical psychology or therapy and how hard it is? Like, is this something you guys are trying to say as a television show? Like, this is the easy path. Here's the hard path, which is therapy, like, or, you know, finding out what's wrong with your brain. And I get up there, I say this to Dan, and, you know, Dan's like, well, can you like ask, can you kind of expand upon it? So I go, well, I'm a veteran with PTSD, and I'm fascinated by the fact that, you know, this is a procedure to forget about your traumas, right? We see this with Mark, where he forgets about or gets the ability to forget about the death of his wife and how hard that is for him. And as someone who had his PTSD, who went through a very traumatic time at war, I would have done this when I was a younger man. Like, this would have been something to help me, or in the moment, right, where I don't have to witness horrible things happening. This could be out of my brain. So Ben and Dan and I have this back and forth like 4 or 5 times over this whole topic in front of 6,000 people. And now I'm starting to like sweat and feel bad because there's people behind me that want to ask a question, and I'm taking up all of this time. And I know, you know, a lot of people are not going to get to ask their questions. So I finish what I'm saying, they answer to the best of their ability, and I walk away. Unbeknownst to me, the Apple people that were with them supposedly were looking for me, and they wanted me to come talk to them, I think it was Ben, Dan, Britt, Adam, and Tramel and Deeshan were there. And I just left. Like, the panel ended, I just walked out the door, and I was like, mission accomplished. Like, this is the one thing I wanted to do, and I did it, and I'm happy, and I'm on cloud 9. I never thought in that moment it would bring me to where I am now and what has happened, you know, since then. So the following day, I went to an industry party for IGN, and as I'm at this party, there's Dan, Tramel, and Deeshan. So I had a little liquid courage in me, and my friend Ben, not Ben Stiller, but my friend Ben, he was pretty drunk, and he's like, let's just go talk to him. And I was like, no, I'm not, I can't, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can do it. I turn around, he's gone. He's already chewing on Dan Erickson's ear, like, You got to meet my buddy, you got to meet my buddy. So I come over and I introduce myself, and I tell Dan, like, hey, you know, I asked a question yesterday, and he looks at me and he goes, oh, you're the veteran. Like, we were looking for you, like, oh, and then, you know, reintroduce myself. And he, you know, says, you know, really nice things about my service and thanks me. And then he introduces me to Tramel and Deeshan, and they were fantastic. And this just puts me even beyond cloud 9 at this point, because I'm like, I didn't expect to meet them, right? Like, I didn't expect any of this to happen over one little question. So that party ends, go back to my hotel. The next day, I get a message from Mr. Stiller on Twitter, which at that time you're like, is this really you? Or is this a social media manager? And he says, I'm really glad you guys got to connect with, you know, Dan and Tramel and Deeshan. Like, I'm going to send you over to the offsite thing as my VIP. Like, go through, check it out, and let me know what you think of it. So I went over there, and they like treated me like I was a famous person or someone important, which cool, right? You go through all the little rooms, and one of the rooms is wellness. And I've never publicly told this story. So I go to the wellness room, and how this worked is they would pick somebody out of the group, and they'd be like, oh, you get a wellness session. And it was normally like a standard scripted thing from the show, where they're just rereading, like, your Audi likes the sound of radar and the sound of rain and all these other things. So we get in this room, and a guy just sits down in the chair, and the actress playing essentially Miss Casey is very upset. because like I could see that this was not right. So she gives the guy the standard thing, which sets the whole group back, because then she asks me to sit down, and she pulls out like a little piece of paper, and they basically gleaned things off of my Twitter profile of that time, that I was a friend to the elderly and children because I delivered the mail, that my Audi loved basketball, that my Audi had gone to war, and all these other things. And I'm just sitting there like, where the hell did this come from? And then you like think like, oh, wait, this because Ben messaged me and this all got set up like in front of me. So when everybody leaves, I was told to wait. So the other people that were with, it's like maybe 10 people, they all go away. And I'm standing outside like the ballroom they did this in at the Hard Rock Hotel, and some of the props people come out that set up all of these little sets, and they gave me like a handful of props that they had made for this offsite, and I was blown away. I'm like, oh my god, like thank you. And I'm thinking this is the end, like tell your bosses I really appreciate this, and thank you. And they gave me like a little notebook. They gave me some of Dylan's like caricatures from his desk.
I love it.
A couple pens. I got one right here. And I take it home. I go back to Milwaukee, and I'm like, oh, this is it. Like I made my day. So my friendship with Ben really kind of starts there, and we really bonded over basketball because I'm a big Milwaukee Bucks fan. He's a huge New York Knicks fan. So I happened to be back out in LA in October of 2022, and the NBA season was just about to begin. And I thought, I'll just send him a message. If it's really him, like, I'm just going to say good luck on the season. Like, maybe I'll see you, when I'm in New York sometime, and keep making, a great show. I love this. And about a week later, he got back to me, and he was like, yeah, like, if you're in New York, just let me know and we'll have you come around. Okay. So from October 2022 until March of 2023, we just talked basketball the entire time. That's all we talked about. And in March of 2023, I went out to New York for a week, and I thought, I'm gonna go out here and I'm just gonna have a good time and see some plays. Here's where the costume comes into play. So I have never done a cosplay before, ever. And I decided for San Diego for 2023 before the strikes happened, because I figured Severance was going to like come back, like to promote season 2. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'll go as a severed worker. And a friend of mine went to college to make props. So I text messaged her, I said, hey, do you think you could make me a waffle party mask from the end of season 1? She had no clue what the hell I was talking about. So I sent all these screenshots, and I'm like, can you make this? Do you think you can do this? And her name is Sarah. She lives in Florida, and she goes, yeah, I can do it. So about a month goes by, and I get the mask, and I'm blown away. It's very close to the actual prop itself. I sent Rodnesha a picture.
Mm-hmm. We will post that for you guys. It's awesome.
Yeah, so I posted it right before I went to a Bucks basketball game. I was wearing a Bucks jersey. I put it on. I put a picture on Twitter, and Ben loved it. That got the attention of Mark Geller, who plays Kier. He loves it, and he's like, hey, if you're ever in New York, bring it with. I got to get a picture with it. And I'll send you that, too, because there's a picture of him holding it like Shakespeare.
I love that.
And so I post it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to New York, but now I got to take this mask with me. And I feel real weird about it, having to go through TSA. And I'm like, this is like a prop. Please don't break it. And they take it out, and they're like, what the hell is this? And I was like, oh, it's a prop for a TV show. And I'm going to see the man it's based on. The day I left, Ben messages me, and he goes, hey, just come to the set. Like, can you come by, pick a day, and we'll figure it out. So I'm like, how can I make this work out my week vacation that I'm going to go and do all this stuff in New York? So this was maybe 3 weeks before the strikes. So they were filming episode 5 for season 2. So a lot of like the reintegration stuff is happening. Mm-hmm. So we get to New York, go there. And at this time, I'm like, hey, man, am I really going to meet Ben? Like, or have I been talking to somebody else? Like, again, it's so strange. You don't know with a celebrity if you're actually talking to them. So I go to the studio, and I was taken around by an assistant, and they showed me a couple of the sets, and it was great. Like, I'd never been on a television set before. I'd never seen how this stuff is made. So then it's like Willy Wonka's factory. Like, Ben comes around the corner, and there's this giant door, and you open the door, and it's Mark's house, like the actual house. It's a built house there. And he's standing in front of me and he's like, hey man, I'm really glad to see you. Like, you're my basketball buddy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm your basketball buddy. Like, let's go, you know? And he takes me into this room and he's like, yeah, like, you know, this is it. This is his house. Like, you want to check it out? And he takes us through all of these sets and starts telling me secrets essentially about season 2. And I'm like, I'm a non-spoiler person. Like, I don't want to know. And it's like, well,
like, but Ben Stiller's spoiling it.
Yeah. When in Rome, right? You're like, when in Rome, I might as well, you know, do it. So he takes me into Mark's basement where they're doing the reintegration. And this was my first time he started asking me questions about PTSD and like what it does to me physically and mentally. And in the moment, I'm like, he's picking my brain for ideas because television doesn't really show you how this works, right? Like TV and movies like to show flashbacks, like, oh, the person's now back in time and they're reliving it. It doesn't work like that, at least not for me. I have not met any veterans where it's done that, but it's all a very anxious feeling. It's almost in a way like nostalgia, where you're just like, oh man, I really want this. And then you feel terrible moments later. So for me with fireworks, I can't do that. Like if I hear that, it reminds me of being at war, and then it puts me at such a heightened situation where I'm going to be a mess for a while until I sort all of that out and deal with those feelings and deal with those thoughts of being at war again. So I'm telling him all of these things, and I'm like, man, am I really telling Ben Stiller about my time at war and what it does to me now as an adult, and just living through it and talking about it? And it's like, okay, this is cool. And he had asked me, you know, about what I thought about the show and how it related to real life. And I was like, well, it's as close as it can get to PTSD, like with these characters, the trauma they're feeling and they're living with. Like, I've not seen anything like it before. So I got to see the 3 desks. And I walk into this room and he turns and he smiles and he looks at me and he goes, yeah, so Irving's dead. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, oh.
More trauma, Ben. Why?
Yeah. And he was so calm and cool about it. Like, he's gone. Like, so there's 3 desks now. Do you want to sit in one?
My God.
Like, let me process this for a minute. So we get to hang out. This was probably about an hour with Ben, and I got to see all this stuff. Now, he left there and they went to start some of the outdoor filming with Burton Irving at the train station. So like, I didn't go to any of that. He had invited me for some nighttime filming at Bell Labs, but I couldn't make it happen. It didn't work to get there. Like, it's not close to the city. So I was like, well, maybe another time. And he's like, yeah, anytime, like casually, just anytime you want. I'm like, okay, you're serious? Like, I'll come back. Like, I'll come back to New York. No big deal. So the next day I got together with Mark Geller, and I'm probably one of the few people on the planet that's had a waffle party with Kier himself. As I'm holding this mask to his face, like, this is you. And we went to this little restaurant in Midtown, and this guy sitting across from us, and he's like, is that mask of him? And I'm like, yeah, it's from a television show. And Mark was a little creeped out, but he handled it like a champ. He's like, can I take a picture of that with him? And I'm like, you ask him, don't ask me. Like, he's the actor. Like, you can take a picture of me holding it. I don't care. Like, it's a pretty cool piece. And, Mark and I became really good friends after that. And he's a fantastic actor and a fantastic man. He promotes the hell out of Severance. If you look at his social media feeds.
Oh,
like,
totally does.
He's really doing yeoman's work with this. So I leave New York. I go back home. I go to San Diego Comic-Con 2023. The strikes happen. Everything is dead. Like, there's nothing there for San Diego. Like, San Diego's become this big multimedia convention. And I'm like, man, I'm going to do this cosplay, but now Apple's not here. Severance isn't here. Like, everything's shut down. Like, and then there were questions of, is this even appropriate? Like, with the strikes happening, you kind of want, I'm a union person. I'm in the Postal Carriers Union. So I'm like, do I have solidarity with my union brothers and sisters? And it's like, is this okay to do now? Like, to promote this when they are having their contract fight? So I go back and forth and I talk to another Severance fan and she convinced me it was okay to do it. So I put the, suit and tie on as a Severance worker. I put my badge on, and I've got a couple like little props that Kat Miller had given me from when I was on set that I took with, and off I went. And I got so many compliments and pictures from the Severed Worker costume, again, which I never planned to do because it was never something I wanted to do. It was always cool to see like people that made these very unique costumes and put all this work into them. And I just didn't want to be hot in 90-degree weather in San Diego in a business suit, suit and tie and dress shoes. And then it's a paper mache mask, so it doesn't breathe. And I did it for a couple hours and I was like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. So that was the costume, the story that Mark told you, because I don't think anybody else has done that yet. No one else has done a waffle party mask or costume, which I'm very proud to have done it, but also at the same time, it's really embarrassing, a little bit like, hey, I did this thing.
I say it's epic.
I love it, actually. Yeah. Mark told us this after we had stopped recording, and we were like, damn it. This was such a good story. Why did we stop recording? So I'm glad we got
it from the source. Somebody was there. Yay.
Love it. Your whole story of just, how you became friends with Ben, got to go to the set. It's so funny because I'll share with you, when we started to launch the podcast, I was like, starting to do the social media for us prior. And so I was on Blue Sky and doing that whole account stuff prior to Rodnesha joining. I'm like, you got to join. There's a lot of Severance fans on here. You got to interact so we can, build a base. And when we shared our first episode, I don't remember which episode it was, but when you first shared one of our episodes, I was like, Rodnesha, you have to see this. I feel like Mike is just a really well-known fan. This is big. I really appreciate, I really valued your opinion when you were like, yeah, check this one out. It's great. So then by the time we, got around to Paley, I had, just with what I had learned about you and being a mailman, I was like, Rodnesha, Mike is asking about Paley. What is his do you know? Have I missed something? What is his connection? And so I was like, at first I was like, oh yeah, he's a super fan. He bought tickets to Paley Fest. He's coming out. And then I was like, no, he's with the cast. We were like, wait, with the cast? It's just such a roller coaster story from you getting there.
I feel like every announcement, Kali would be like, who is Mike? Who is Mike? Who does Mike know? Like,
yeah, I can't remember. Rodnesha forwarded me one message and I can't remember what you had said, but I was like, wait, am I thinking of the wrong person? I thought Mike was a mailman. What happened? Okay.
I get this a lot, and it's always it's hard to explain without going through the whole story, right? Like, it takes a half hour to tell everybody because no one ever believes me. Right, like I can show a picture, and then they're like, "Oh my God, that's Ben Stiller, it's Patricia Arquette, it's Adam Scott, so and so," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not bullshitting you. Like, this is just an accident that's happened. Like, it wasn't intentional. It just happened because of a question I asked, and I never, in my wildest delusions in my life, like I never thought it would lead me down this path. Like, it's like I got to do my thing, I was happy, content, and then I got to go to the set." And at that time, it was just set up for that. Like, there was, no filming going on yet. And I'm walking around, I get to, play with this stuff. And Kat Miller was, if you guys can talk to her, like try to get her on the podcast, like
get all these people.
Yeah.
But yes.
Like she's so knowledgeable, but she was so fantastic to talk to. And then telling her that story, right? Like, I'm telling her now how do you know Ben? How do you know these people? I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is just what happened.
I asked a question and
I dunk mailboxes for a living. Like, that's all I do. Like, I'm this, to call me a super fan is fascinating because I am a super fan about basketball. Like, I am a super fan for my Milwaukee Bucks. Like, my claim to fame in life is they won the championship and I celebrated on the court with them. And that in itself is its own long story.
Oh, boy.
So yeah, like when things were coming towards the Paley Fest, Ben had got in touch with me and was like, "Hey, we're doing this big thing for the season finale. Do you want to come?" Who says no?
Right.
Who says, nah,
pass.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, like we're going to be out in California. So like, let's go. And we ran into you at, Paley and said hello. And I wish we would add more time, but things went sideways with Apple, and that's okay. But it was a fantastic time. And then, I got to backtrack a little bit here. So in 2024, I had gone back to the set for multiple days for actual filming. So I got to see the escape from the testing floor, and I got to see the Cold Harbor room where
the
Jen was
crib
taking
room.
apart the crib room. Yeah. So I'm standing with Ben while he's directing this, and I have no clue what I'm watching other than it's spoilers, right? Like he's like whispering in my ear, spoilers. And I'm like, okay. So,
always the comedian, Ben.
Yeah, always a comedian, and always making fun of me on that, because like he's never let that down. Every time he sees me, when we're together, he's like, "Oh, you're the no spoilers guy. Like I can't tell you anything," and then he'll tell me a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, now I have to live with this, and I can't tell anyone, because if I tell someone, Apple will put me in the ground. So I'm on set and I'm watching Adam go into the Cold Harbor room. I watched this like 100 times, and it's me, Ben, and Dan, all within like a 5-foot radius. So after like, I don't know, a dozen takes, I'm like, I'm going to go sit with Dan. And I sit with Dan, and this is where I really get to tell Dan about my life. Like he knew about that I was a war veteran and known that from my question at Comic-Con, but didn't know much more about me. And I spent like 2 hours with Dan just telling him, about my time at war, my life as a mailman, my life as a college student that got a degree in history. Like, Mark has a degree in history, like you have a degree in history. So we just spend all this time chatting. And before I left my last day on set, Dan says, I want to stay in touch with you and, send you some ideas and pick your brain a little bit about being a service member and having gone to war in an environment that wasn't like a normal war. How is that? How does that work? How do you train for that? And I had very fascinating conversations with Dan about the mindset of going into that. What does that do to a person? What does that do to a young person? How do you survive that? And how do you get to the point where you are now? And, the simplest answer to that is a lot of courage, because it takes a lot of courage to go to therapy, particularly as a service member. When I served, you couldn't come out with PTSD. You couldn't go to your doctors and say, hey, I think I have a problem with my brain. I had to do that on my own. At 21 years old, I went and paid out of pocket to see a therapist because I didn't know what was wrong with me. Like, I didn't know why I wasn't sleeping. I didn't know why I was having the same reoccurring nightmares, or why I was probably drinking too much. But I was 21, and when you're 21, you're like, let's have a good time, right? But when does the good time end? You don't know. And as a service member, I had to work every day. I had to do this stuff. So it never went away. I didn't get a break. So I got to share those things with Ben and Dan, over this 3-year period. Being around them and, having them get to know me just as much as I've gotten to know them. That's been the most fascinating thing, that they've allowed me to come play in this world with them, even though I'm, again, a mailman. Like, here I am. So I'm glad to share that with you guys. Like, I've not told anybody else, publicly at least. There's friends and family that know this stuff, but I've never gotten to share this because nobody's asked me.
Well, glad we asked.
We're here to ask the question.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Mike, it's been so fun to get to talk to you and get all of this. You know what? It reminds me of you saying, like, I'm just a mailman. It reminds me of The Good Place, another great show of mine that I love, where Kristen Bell, spoilers, if you haven't seen the show, at some point, Kristen Bell becomes a leader of sorts. I won't spoil it for anyone out there who hasn't watched The Good Place, even though it's been enough time and you should have. But she's talking to Michael and she's like, I don't know that I can do this. I'm just a girl from Arizona. And Michael says, maybe the only person who can do this is a girl from Arizona. It's a very big, beautiful moment. You'll understand it if you've seen the show. But you saying that, I'm like, I feel like it makes perfect sense to me that a guy like you, Mike, Mailman Mike, would be who Ben and Dan would be like, this is who we need to hear from. Like, this is whose voice we need to garner. So it makes perfect sense to me.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. And I love what you guys do on your podcast. And when I first came across this, like, it was something different than what's out there for the Severance podcast, right? There's a lot of really good ones. And some are just so focused on just pure telling you what happened in the episode. And that's fine. I listen to a lot of those, but to get your point of view, to Kali's point of view, like that's great. And you get the analysis, you get other ideas from other science fiction themes or drama themes. Like that's something that not everybody focuses on. And I've loved that, and being a postal carrier is a lonely job. Like if I don't see anybody, I'm on my own. So I need something to kind of entertain me as I do my job. So there's plenty of podcasts out there now, and I've found ones that I've really enjoyed. I don't know if you guys notice this, but Ben's very attentive on social media. And I know he was listening to a lot of the podcasts throughout season 2 and hearing what the fans were saying, because that's like the only outlet, right, for fans is social media now. And he's pretty active on social media, which I know you guys had referenced in a previous episode with your experience going through that, kind of having the same thing. Like, am I really talking to this person right now?
Yeah.
Like it's surreal, right?
Yes.
Like you're like, oh man, you guys you're messaging me? Like
the number of times Kali would text me while I'm heading to work because she checked Blue Sky and she's like, Ben just responded to us. Ben just retweeted or whatever it is. Re-skeeted. I still hate that word, skeeted.
I hate it. Yeah, I hate it so much. I just say post. I'm like, I put a post on Blue Sky.
It is very surreal. It is very surreal. But Mike, thank you for joining us today. I know you're excited to be with us, but honestly, we were very excited to have you, especially since, again, you were one of our earliest champions of our podcast, and we felt very official when you started sharing us.
It's true.
I was very happy to do so. Like I said, when I came across that first video where you guys, I think, were either in the kitchenette, I think that might have been the post I took. I was like, this is so cool. How come no one thought of this before? I'm so jealous because I don't have my own podcast. I don't do anything like that. So I was like, man, I really wish, and then you guys did it, and it's so impressive and so well done. You got to come along to Paley Fest, which that in itself was fantastic. And then you're just going to keep growing the podcast, which is great.
Thank you. We hope so.
You will. We just need to get a couple of those other people on here, maybe get Tramel or
rub shoulders, Mike. Help us, please. I don't want to spoil who, but I'm talking to someone right now who hopefully, fingers crossed, if boxes are checked, I's are dotted, and T's are crossed, can come on. And I'll just leave it at that.
Let's just leave it there.
But we're hoping that that'll be like more of the dominoes falling of people we can hopefully chat with.
You guys will get there. We'll get you there. We'll do our best, right? We'll send a couple messages around and see what we can pull off.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to our podcast. We are so excited that Mike got to hang with us. We hope you guys enjoyed the conversation we got to have. As usual, you can follow us on all the socials. We're on Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, Lemonade, and YouTube at the UUR Pod. That is where you can find us. You can also email us at the UURpod@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us or for Mike, we'll relay them and get his responses. And if you feel so inclined to become a patron, you can join our Patreon. It is patreon.com/the-UUR-pod. You can join the Severed Floor membership tier, and that's where you'll get all of our extended cut episodes, bonus content, early access. We're probably going to have some extensions with Mike that you may not get to hear on the audio pod. So if you want to see what that's all about, join us there. Otherwise, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That helps our channel grow, hopefully big enough to attract Rickon or Milchick or Miss Casey /Gemma or whoever. We're trying, y'all, and you guys can help us get there. Okay.
All right, you guys. Well, this has been the UUR. And remember,
be ever merry.
Yes.